My name is Lumi Tan. I'm a curator and writer based in New York, and I'm the curator for Focus in Frieze New York this year. I think everyone is drawn to New York for the same reasons maybe I was drawn to it. It's a place of possibility and opportunity, a place to reinvent yourself. I think for artists, it's a place to find community. Today, we were in Tribeca and Chinatown, which, historically have been a place for artist studios, galleries, and, spaces where art is really concentrated. That makes it very easy to kind of just have an incredible spectrum of experiences in a very short amount of time. So the first stop that we're making today is Ortuzar Projects, which is a gallery in Tribeca that's been open since 2018. And it's a space where I always feel like I'm discovering artists. They always have incredibly researched exhibitions.
Ortuzar Projects was started as a project space. Initially, Alice wanted it to run for 2 years, and I think at the 5-year mark, it became really clear that we had kind of developed a lot of relationships that required a more conventional gallery. We were always looking to work with artists who were sort of less well known in New York or kind of were underrepresented in America in a larger sense. Also included a lot of American artists who felt underrepresented for many different factors, whether it's because they're a woman of a certain age, they're a person of color, they're queer, or because of, where they live, the regionalism kind of aspect.
Well, I think it's great that we're here in your new space with these 2 shows by Julia Scher and Jacqueline du Young. It's a bit of a homecoming for Julia as well. Can you tell us about that work?
She kind of came into her mature practice in a lot of ways in the late 80s after moving to New York. And actually she showed in the space we're in now when this building was artist space in the late 80s. She really hasn't had a lot of institutional or sort of gallery support in the United States for quite a while. And I think particularly on the heels of 4 major solo exhibitions in Europe, it's been really great to see that kind of happening in her hometown.
And can you tell us about Jacqueline du Young's show?
Yeah, so we thought Jacqueline's show would be a great companion to Julia's. Jacqueline has been working since really the early 60s, largely as a painter, although her kind of life and career intersects with all these different kind of European avant-garde groups, including Cobra and the Situationists. And I think it's interesting that she was sort of kicked out of the Situationist group because of her commitment to painting.
The next stop is Chapter New York. Chapter New York is really indicative of, the kind of ambitions of a dealer who's working at a larger gallery and then wants to make their own kind of impression, bringing in artists that may not be able to be shown in a larger gallery and kind of starting from the ground up again. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the gallery?
I was working as a director of the gallery in Chelsea called Mitchell, Innes and Nash. And a space became available to me on Henry Street that was about 175 square feet. I was working it as a project space, and then after about a year and a change, I decided to make the shift to becoming a full-time gallery. And now that we're on Walker Street, it's like constantly filling out, which is really exciting because the neighborhood is also, unlike other neighborhoods within New York, Tribeca, every space is slightly different. So you really get to see the personality of each gallery within it. The exhibition is with the artist Anne Green Kelly, who is originally from New York and has lived in LA for about 5 years. This exhibition is actually about her return to New York. So if you look through the show, you'll see like the New York City skyline. You'll see her actually like have moving boxes moving to New York. So it feels like a very kind of personal kind of exhibition in that space.
Yeah, I like how many reveals there are in this space.
And then if you actually look at the sculpture from the side, you see the New York City skyline. You can actually see the kind of drive down, you see like the box, and then you see her studio floor and the table.
All the details are incredible. The next stop is Canada Galleries, and they have a very particular kind of aesthetic that, has never wavered even with trends changing or the market changing. It's a very steadfast gallery.
this is our 25th year, actually.
It's actually 25 years.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was just started by artists who were trying to establish themselves in the New York City art world, which seemed like a really daunting and unwelcoming place at the time. So we just tried to create a space that was some level an answer to that, or an opening for artists that we cared about. We were so fortunate to be in the epicenter of this, the most vital gallery center in the world, probably. You go from one gallery that's great to another one, and they're all a little bit different, and there's more opening every day. So it feels very fortunate that we're in this position.
This show that we're in right now is Sadie Laska, and we've been working with Sadie for probably 15 years. She's mostly a painter and a drummer. Started out she was home with a new baby and was making flags. She got her sewing machine out and was making these kind of flag paintings. And this version of the flags turned into these fish, windsocks. This is the artwork of Luke Murphy, who's another artist that we've been working with for about 15 years.
He was a painter. He thought of painting through a kind of conceptual lens. He kind of filters his paintings through this digital kind of coding envelope now.
Corima is an example of this, ever-expanding restaurant scene, kind of downtown between Chinatown and Tribeca. Younger chefs are really showing their ambitions and also showing the kind of influences of, not just one type of cuisine, but really bringing in their kind of experiences from working at other restaurants in New York, other, cultures they've experienced.
Well, it's kind of like a natural progression, it took us 3 years to kind of develop what we now call like progressive Mexican. At first, when we were doing the pop-ups, it was just a way of doing something of our own, during the pandemic.
Of course.
Before the restaurant, I always found myself just coming to Chinatown or finding excuses just to be here. Then we found the place.
I mean, there's such a great community of restaurants in this area now, and it keeps kind of growing and growing.
Exactly, yeah. We're very lucky to be kind of, part of the movement that is coming to Chinatown, and yeah, it's beautiful.
And you've talked a lot about the influence of migration on, your food and your ingredients. And are there specific dishes that you could talk about that kind of encapsulate that sense of migration or influence of migration?
I think one of the biggest ones is, I think the tortilla is something that we really want to, we have a huge German culture in northern Mexico that people don't really realize. There's a lot of wheat, and I think that's like the biggest one probably for us, is using like Sonoran wheat for this tortilla and bringing it all the way over here.
And I know kind of every choice within the restaurant is very intentional, from, the ceramics and the spirits that you serve. Could you talk a little bit about those choices?
So Sotol is huge in northern Mexico. It's kind of like I guess it's getting discovered, it's like mezcal. And then now we have the opportunity of like showcasing, it comes from Chihuahua, from the state that I come from,
Right.
And it's super cool to be able to bring it all the way over here and like show people what it tastes like. And it's, we call it tastes like what desert rain smells like. So it's super cool. I highly recommend you.
And who have you seen kind of be your clientele in the neighborhood?
Every day is different. Like, it's very, very cool to see the support of every, New Yorker, and also like for, outsiders. This is the beauty of this restaurant. It's super accessible. It kind of gives you, either you come here and have a nice dinner, tasting menu, or you can come here and just have like a snack at the bar and have a, like a drink.
So we close out the day at Far Near, and this is, a space that really embodies just the kind of intimacy that can still be achieved in the New York City kind of arts ecosystem.
My name's Lulu Yao Joyello. I'm the founder of Far Near, which is a book series and platform, and this is our physical space that just opened in January.
So why did you start Far Near?
I started it in around 2017, and it was kind of a mixture of seeing the media space and what was out there already for Asian artists and Asian representation in general. I feel like this is a way for people, one, to come and actually see the books in person,
Right.
but also to connect in kind of an intimate level in New York, which I feel like is so crowded and crazy that you never really have time to just sit and like be with books or be with people that are kind of like-minded individuals.
You're on Canal Street, it's very hectic, and then you come up here and it's kind of this oasis. How did you want the space to feel and like welcome people?
I think also being in Chinatown is really important because of the history of art collectives and Asian artist collectives specifically. I really like the idea of it being more of like an informal space because I feel like there's already a lot of galleries and art institutions and also a lot of like party opportunities for people to meet, but there's never really something for like more introverted people or people who work better in smaller groups, spanning across like art, curation, fashion, advertising, film, poetry, but they may not ever cross paths. And I think that's also really exciting to like kind of get everyone to meet each other and kind of speak across disciplines.
The general feel of seeing all these kind of cultural spaces in a very short amount of time is that New York is still a really supportive place for all these different types of audiences and all this different type of work that is being shown.